On this week's podcast, Timmy and I talk about an issue of extreme import to him personally. I'll allow him to hold court.
Bald,
blind,
and buddies.
Timmy C., how the hell are you? Sunday afternoon, beautiful day.
Yeah.
How are you, my blind friend?
Nice and sunny here in the eastern branch. No, the western branch.
Western branch. I'm the eastern branch.
Yeah.
Of the bulb of the triple B.
Triple B.
Yeah.
You got some sunscreen on your head today?
We should. I did actually. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, "Oh, you got your hair cut high and tight." He goes, "I'm losing it." And he's probably 45, maybe 46. Basically a couple years younger than me. And he said, "I'm losing it," and I said, "I started losing it when I was 18. Like, you're not going to get any sympathy from me. You made it to 45. Don't you remember when Jimmy and I saw you and we were like, going a little thin up top?
Yeah,
You're starting to look like,
thin.
what do you call you? You called the Andy Kaufman. You're like, yeah, I'm a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
But mine was, I had no chance. I mean, do you know how, like, everybody on every side, mom's father, dad's father, everybody bald. So, yeah, it's okay. There's worse things that have happened.
Indeed.
But what do you do in the summer? You guys belong to a pool? Do you go on vacation? What fills your summer days?
Yeah, we're in a pool. Paul is doing, I think he's doing summer school or some gym class. Peter's working. We're going to either go up and see my folks in Michigan or Oregon to see my sister. Things like that.
Tell your mother that I have added candied pecans as a permanent addition to the menu.
Ooh, she'll totally want those.
Yeah. So when you go, let me know and I'll just send them to you for free.
Yeah.
So I just got an order, actually. I kind of like when local businesses support local businesses, and I support this local business extensively, and by that I mean the local orthodontist. Just to put it in perspective, when you add up between my three children, and again, I know things change and medicine gets better and blah, 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 but Timmy, I got braces once. I didn't get pre-braces. I didn't get this. I didn't get separators. I didn't get that. I got braces. They took them off. They said, wear your retainer now.
Yeah.
My kids are getting braces, taking them off, putting them back on. Does that make any
and
sense
then
to you?
those permanent retainer, I think Peter has a permanent retainer sort of thing in there, which is interesting. So,
But just to put it in perspective, my monthly, payment stipend for the orthodontist is, I think, my second largest payment after my mortgage.
wow.
It's like $600.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because I paid off the cars finally. And I don't drive anywhere, so why am I going to get a new car? Literally, I think I drive like 2,000 miles a year living where I do.
Yeah.
But she ordered for me. I misread the email. She's giving gift baskets, which is really nice, to all the local dentists that have referred business to she. And she said, can you make me a gift basket? We're going to give away 12 of them. So I understood that to be, okay, mine is going to be one of the 12. Nope. They wanted me to make 12. So I was traveling this week for work. My flight got delayed. By the way, my flight got delayed 4 hours out of Denver because of weather. And I got home I landed at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it's just brutal.
Yeah.
So, but what are you going to do? But I mean, it's a nice problem to have, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And anything new other than that? How's everybody?
Oh, they're pretty good. Paul has finals this week, so we're kind of helping with that. And yeah, that's the big stuff.
What's he, a freshman or sophomore?
Sophomore.
Wow.
World history and chemistry. So.
All right, I'd be good on the first half. You'd be better on the second half.
Yeah. I'm actually not bad at world history.
No, there's nothing you're bad at, Timmy, to be perfectly fair. So,
except for driving.
Speaking... seeing. I fail at seeing. Speaking of which, I won't embarrass him, but I'm always honored when somebody says, hey, I've been listening to your podcast. And it just so happened I haven't seen this fellow, and I won't say who it is, but he belongs to my pool. And nicest fellow. And he said, you guys are entertaining. He said, you can tell you're genuinely friends. And I guess somebody asked him, what's his podcast all about? And he goes, you listen to John at the pool? Yeah, that's him. But anyhow, he said the one thing, he was fascinated. And I was trying to explain to him, because I've known you now for 3 decades plus, that it's just second nature to me how you are just able to do anything. Because I guess I've made comments to you about, hey, did you read that article? Or, hey, did you watch the game? And he's like, explain to me how he's watching the Super Bowl. And I said, you have no idea how perceptive Timmy is. I said, I remember this one time, I said to you maybe 6-8 weeks after we met, I said, what do I look like? And you had it like within a pound of what I weighed and blah, blah, blah. That was, of course, 30 years ago. So that was probably, 200 pounds ago, right?
Yeah.
But I said, I can't explain it. It's just Timmy. He knows like how to do this. And like, so how do you, when you watch the Super Bowl, is it just you audio or do you get descriptive text? Or
No, I just listen to it. And I also there's a podcast, it's called Check the Mic, where they break down NFL games and talk a lot about like what's happening on the field. So that sort of enhances how I understand football.
Is that particularly tailored to accessibility needs
No,
and so
it's
forth?
just a really good podcast. So
And yeah, and you love football. You always have, right? Yeah, that's your sport. And he did mention, he goes, and I've definitely picked up on your love affair with baseball. I said, oh, that's coming through? I said, yeah. So, but to that end, Timmy, let me give you the trivia question from last week. I'll do the trivia question for this week, but then I want to jump in with both feet because we're going to talk about something that's a little bit controversial, but extraordinarily personal. And I really want to just let you hold the mic because, and I'll explain in a moment. But the trivia question last week was one city of the four major North American sports, and that's, of course, baseball, hockey, football, and baseball, has had their teams in the finals in the same year. Do you know what city it was? And secondarily, do you know what year it was?
Was it Minneapolis?
Good guess, because they've had the Twins and they had the Vikings in there and so forth. No, it was actually Philadelphia where I reside now.
Ooh.
In 1980. 1980 was the year. Now, mind you, they had four teams in the finals and only one won. The Phillies won it. But the Flyers lost, the Eagles lost to in the Super Bowl and to the Raiders, and basketball, the Sixers lost to, I forget I believe it was the Lakers. So the Flyers, the Eagles, and the Sixers all lost, but the Phillies won. But they're the only city that has ever done that. And that's pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And this week's trivia question, again, dovetails on the four major North American sports. And again, I know I'm probably offending people who are lacrosse fans or WNBA fans or things of this nature, tennis fans. There are all sorts of wonderful sports. But for trivia purposes, the four major North American sports, hockey, baseball, basketball, football, really sort of gravitate towards these kind of trivia questions. There are 6 team names that are shared across the leagues. So, it could be an NHL team that has this name and a NBA team that has this name, or a football team that has this name and a baseball team that has the same name. Can you name the 6?
I can
Takes a little work.
2 or 3 off the bat. I can get 2
Yeah,
or 3
I got
off the
2.
bat.
Most people can get 2 or 3, and then you get into the innocuous ones, and I'll explain in a minute, next week. So,
Okay.
yeah. But Timmy, we're going to talk about Jesse Ridgway this week. And first of all, I want you to lay the predicate for what Jesse Ridgway is all about, and this article that came out that you sent me. And tell us, and I don't want to say why this is personal, but why don't you hold court, sir?
Sure. So this actually, my wife was telling me we got some emails from some organizations we belong to that said, "Are you aware of what's going on in social media?" Because they were nice, strong advocacy emails, and I said, "No, I wasn't." So I did a little digging, and it turns out Jesse Ridgway is a YouTuber who I've never watched his stuff, who decided to tell his million closest friends that he and his wife aborted their child at 5 months with Down syndrome. And as is apt to happen in our modern society, there was a social media backlash. So why are we talking about this? As we say, my lived experience relates. I'm blind with a genetic issue that could likely...
Wait a minute. You're blind?
Yeah. It's in the title, John. You're bald.
Oh, I was telling this guy at the pool yesterday, and I was like, well, he started out as Timmy Cordes. That became Timmy C, and then Jimmy called him Timmy C nothing.
Yeah.
And I was telling you're a black belt in what, 2 disciplines?
Yeah.
2 of them, right?
Yeah.
Like there's not, and I was trying to explain to him, I was like, as soon as you meet Timmy, you realize there's nothing he can't do. So, and I'm not trying to embarrass you, but anyway,
Right.
So you are blind, and
Yep.
your shared experience, and please continue.
Yeah,
I was just lightening the mood, that's all.
Yeah. And I have a son who's now 16 with Down syndrome. So I thought this was relevant, and I'm a doctor, that it was relevant for us to talk about, because I think there's misinformation and messages through this, which is worth pausing to think about.
And you'll link the article. It was from the Los Angeles Times, right?
Yeah.
You'll
for
link
sure.
the article in the
There's
show
a
notes
bunch.
so people
There's
can
one in
read
the New York Times. It's all over.
Oh, it's been
replicated.
Okay. Yeah. And hold court, Timmy.
Okay.
Thoughts?
So we'll get into the details, but just in summary, I believe that we should be judged by how we treat the weakest among us. And it doesn't get much more vulnerable than the disabled, and especially the disabled before they've been born. I believe that human life is inherently valuable, and you can't judge someone's worth by their disability. All the rest is details. So Down syndrome, which they're talking about, is a genetic disorder whereby individuals have 3 of the 21st chromosomes. So chromosomes are numbered.
Is that trisomy 21?
Yep.
That's what Down syndrome is?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so chromosomes are numbered. The lower number is the biggest. So they have a triplicate of one of the smaller chromosomes. They have a variety of issues, including intellectual disabilities,
And you're talking about kids with Down.
kids with Down syndrome.
Okay.
Yeah. Heart problems. There's certain risks of cancer and other things like that. So, that's the grounding. So this guy Ridgway, I looked him up. And in general, my opinion is he's immature, self-involved, lacks courage.
Well, Timmy, I mean, doesn't that sort of isn't that par for the course if you
think it is.
make a living with, what did you say, a couple million of your closest friends on
Yeah.
YouTube?
Yeah.
I mean, and you're a psychiatrist, which we could get into the loneliness factor associated with that as well, but we can do that later.
Yeah.
So
this guy's born in 1992. He's done some projects, some film stuff. Goes by Mick Jugger Nuggets on YouTube. Has made projects like Psycho. Has 4.3 million subscribers, I think, and 2 billion views. And some of his stuff mixes family, video logging, and things like that. So he's very successful at artifice. And look at me, right?
well, isn't that the quintessential American notion today?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the Hilton kids. They're famous for being famous.
Yeah.
I mean, accomplishment very rarely means much, but keep going.
So then he goes on to social media and says, hey, we aborted our baby, right? And there's 2 things with this. Is number 1, why would you do that? Right? And number 2, what did you expect to happen? It's like he's surprised that in America people think other than he does. It's really that, like, his cluelessness, I think, is the most amazing thing to me.
Timmy, from a medical standpoint, and I'm certainly not going to disagree with anything you said, and we can debate ad infinitum where life ultimately begins. I happen to agree with you. I think life begins at conception. That being said, I believe in the old Bill Clinton adage, which is abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. I don't believe in it as birth control post facto. I don't. I think every life inherently has value. You're not going to hear me disagree with a single thing you said. What I'm really asking is, I was unaware of how many genetic conditions there are prior to marrying Katie, who is, of course, in pediatric and in nursing and worked in cardiology and so forth. There are a number of genetic conditions, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's one called trisomy 18. Mm-hmm. Can you talk at length about that? Because, again, to me, it's a question of variances. I think that I probably could not. But again, I also want to stipulate that I'm not going to be the one that's going to be carrying the child for 9 months. That's the first and foremost thing that I want to stipulate, obviously. But it is my understanding that there are some significant genetic abnormalities, trisomy 18 being one of them, that reasonable people could argue, you may very well be considering abortion, and that may be acceptable morally. I don't know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's been a while since med school with the trisomy 18, but trisomy 13 and 18 are also compatible with life. So they can be born. Folks can have, shorter lifespans, usually, cognitive disabilities, things of that sort. There's also conditions where people are actually born without a developed brain. They call that anencephaly. And I think that's also a condition that you could throw in this bucket. I guess what I would say is, and I know the slippery slope argument is not always compelling, but when we start to say this is worth living and this isn't, I think that's automatically dangerous territory.
No doubt. But I've always said one of the things that I lament is that people have a very difficult time grasping nuance. Mm-hmm. And it's particularly true in today's politically charged environment, is it not?
Yeah.
Meaning, if you say Trump did anything right and you're, a liberal, you are completely disavowed, right? I think that the White House probably did need refurbishing. From what I've understood from President Obama, President Bush prior to he, and so forth, the White House is sort of falling down around. There's ways to do it. I don't necessarily agree with him just destroying the East Wing and throwing up a ballroom.
Right.
My point being is the same thing could apply to criminality. There's jaywalking, and that is indeed a crime. But that's not the same thing as murder.
Right.
And so I always am curious about the absolutes and I agree with you. The slippery slope, particularly as it relates to life, is not the same. But that being said, is there not conditions, genetic conditions and so forth, that are incompatible with life that you ultimately would have to make these decisions? Because my understanding, and I'm not an expert, I'm not presupposing to be, I don't know what I would do if I was put in this position. But if the diagnosis came back with trisomy 18, it's my understanding that the average lifespan is a year or two. Am I wrong? Or
yeah, no, I think I've seen like things like that. Yeah, and I think there also are always usually cases where people exceed expectations.
oh, sure,
You know,
sure,
so,
yeah. And
yeah.
I don't think I could. I want to be as clear as possible as to where I lie, which is I think I'm 100%. I wouldn't know until I'm put in this position. It's always sort of like these people I love that they pontificate about. Oh, when the plane goes down, I'll be the one. Blah, blah. You don't know until you're there,
Yeah.
right? I like to think, just based on ethics, morality, and so forth, I happen to agree with you that life begins at conception. I think life has value inherently to that end. I would be very hard-pressed to find a situation where I would abort a child, first, A, with Down syndrome. B, you had mentioned your mother could have aborted you, and you wouldn't, you would have never become the second doctor ever to become or the second blind person ever to become a doctor.
Yeah, most days I'm happy to be alive, So I think the other thing to think about, John, maybe you can help me understand this. So I'm trying to understand this from a modern cultural context.
I don't know if I'm your cultural nuance or your modern societal cultural.
So Ridgway sent out, I think it's part of a tweet or something. He says, "I just hope people can empathize with the fact that it's a hard decision or hard situation to be in." And then he goes on to say, "We are just trying to do what is right for our family." So to me, the implication is that this child with Down syndrome is already an other. They're outside the family, and this person can't conceptualize the family, including the individual with Down syndrome. So why does this guy need my empathy?
You're not going to hear me defend Jesse Ridgway. First of all, I think that social media, and I think in layman's terms, most people would agree with this. It's a problem. My brother has said that he's pretty convinced that social media is going to be the reason that Western civilization is going to fail. I'm not that draconian, but I think that sharing everything, and particularly with strangers online, and again, he might have, say, 20 billion followers. I have no idea. How many of those are legitimately people that are interested in him, and how many of those are Russian bots? Or bots in general. I don't know. And what value do you get from people following you? But you're not going to hear me try and justify that behavior. What I am saying is I think that decisions like that, for me, it's pretty simple. I just couldn't do it. I think decisions like that tend to be complicated. I tend to agree with you that this is sort of minimized. He's creating an other with his unborn child. I get it. But by the same token, I'm just not in a position, per se. I'm not morally perfect, and I'm not in a position to act as such. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess I would say if the question is where does my empathy go, it would go more to the child than ever to him, right? Like, the child has my empathy, and you're a dude who, and his rationale was flawed. He said, they 50% of kids with Down syndrome have heart defects, and then he said, and they have vision and hearing problems. John, the kid might need glasses or a hearing aid, right? How superficial is that? Because he's on YouTube and just wants to be seen and heard? Like, how superficial can you be?
Here's the other thing. Why are you telling people about this? This is my big thing with these types of decisions, and the reason that I will always go to bat for the idea that I want abortion to be legal, safe, legal, and rare, is I think that's a decision that is outside of the realm of political influence, or should be. I don't think politicians are there to make that determination. I think that's between you and whatever you believe God to be or not to be or what have you. I don't think that's something you share. That's my whole point. And by putting this on...
He has to explain why his wife's baby bump went away, right? I mean, I think that's...
You don't!
Well... he feels like he does.
No, you don't.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where I foundationally disagree with you. People are... And if his wife's baby bump goes away and somebody says, what happened? You say, it's none of your business.
Yeah. I would be happier.
You ask that?
Yeah.
What?
I would be happier with that than this attempt at rationalization, right?
Was he rationalizing or what? Well, again, I think
it's the woe is me. I terminated the existence of another being, and don't you feel sad for me? It's like, give me a break.
All right. Far be it for me to try and defend his behavior, but maybe hear me out on this. And I know you're going to go, no, right? This is pretty much where the Nazis come in and eugenics. I think that the world needs to embrace nuance. I don't agree with the decision. I'm 100% on your side with that. As clear as day. This is as black as could be, as black and white as could be for me. That being said, I don't think it's a fly-by-night like, let's order pizza, no, let's get Chinese food. I think it's a complicated decision that needs to be made. I don't agree with the decision, but I at least understand the nuance. But by virtue of posting it on social media, haven't you negated the nuance? Because you're posting it for 1 billion or whatever people to share with you. The fact that he posted it on social media to me completely is even not worse, but you understand what I'm saying. It certainly didn't better an already bad situation.
So irony of ironies, John. I was studying world history with my son, like I said, with Down syndrome, and they mentioned.
Oh, and by the way, I have to just preface this. I hope Paul listens. I know Peter does. I hope Paul listens, because Paul is the man. I love that kid.
He's a good kid.
He's the man, huh?
He's a good kid.
He's a great kid. I mean, he's the sweetest soul. And we interviewed one of his buddies, right? What was his buddy's name? I forget that.
Graham. We had Graham on.
Who makes me look like a raging conservative, comparatively speaking.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, I just say that I'm not trying to embarrass. I'm not trying to embarrass Paul. I'm certainly not trying to embarrass you. But that guy is the man. Yeah. And I do happen to agree with the statement that the true measure of a civilized society is the manner in which it treats the least among us.
Yeah.
Animals, people with disabilities, the least protected, these kinds of things. And I always say I signed up for liberalism, classic small L liberalism, because I want my daughters to be able to have equal rights. I want protections for the least among us. I didn't sign up for people to hop the bus in San Francisco or defecate in Seattle and call it liberalism. That's insanity, right? And again, nuance. I think this is a situation. I don't agree. I 100% disagree with his decision. I further just 100% disagree with the decision to share it on social media.
Yeah,
I do recognize the nuance, though. That's as good of a defense as you're going to get, which is basically like saying, yeah, I swung. I didn't try real hard. The ball came. I swung somewhere. I don't know. No, you're not going to hear me defend it, but I do see the nuance of complicated decisions. And for he and she, that was probably a complicated decision. But I don't agree with it. So.
Yeah. So you brought up the Nazis.
Which by definition, you know the rule.
Yeah.
First person who brings up the Nazis in an argument has, by definition, lost that argument. So I'm curious to see where this is going.
Well, so in 1920, a German psychiatrist and a jurist wrote a thesis basically called "Permitting the Destruction of Unworthy Life," or basically they laid out.
Please tell me this was Goebbels that wrote this.
No, it was Alfred Hoche and Carl Binding are the two. This is in 1920, and this was sort of the template for what eventually became the Nazi extermination of about 300,000 people with disabilities.
Yeah. People forget that, the summarily rounding up the Jews and Hebrews and so forth. They forget that, they were trying to sort of streamline the race, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so tell me if you hear any echoes of this in the Jesse Ridgway stuff. Hoche and Binding wrote about the financial and moral burden on a person's family, hospital, and state caused by what they deemed lives not worth living, right? So Jesse Ridgway is like, how could you compare me to Hitler, right? It's the same value judgment that led to the death of 300,000 disabled folks. And the thing about Nazis is,
oh, please. I'm curious to see how this sentence finishes. Where's the period on this sentence?
It wasn't their cruelty, right? Human history is rife with cruelty. It's how they turned cruelty into efficiency, clinical efficiency.
Well, they're Germans. I mean, they're not exactly known for, being warm and fuzzy.
I think this week, Ashley Ridgway had a clinically efficient termination, right? And I think you can't unsee the parallels of this valuing of life and efficiency, right?
Yeah. I don't agree with it. George Will, who, as you know, I revere, his son John turned 50 recently. He's a couple years older than you and I. And he was born, say, in the early 1970s. And at that time, there was still these sort of mental hospitals and things of this nature where they would take, people with disabilities and things of that nature and take them and, handle it. And they asked him, and he wrote an article about this basically, and they said, do you want to take your son home? And his response was, well, I rather thought that's what parents do with their children.
Yes.
And sort of, yeah, this is my son. This is what God has bestowed upon me. There are certain things that I think need to be recognized, though. This fellow, you're not going to hear me defend his behavior, period, end of story, full stop. But, there is statistical analysis that is proven, and I know what you're going to say, which is so, and I agree with you, but that the long-term cost savings for the legalization of abortion for every dollar that's spent leads to long-term societal cost savings of $12. It's a 12x return. And the reason being is this is the dirty little secret that people who are, want to judge others about these difficult decisions that are oftentimes made, and I'm not minimizing it, again, safe, legal, and rare, is that it tends to be poor people with lack of education, lack of financial resources, things of this nature, who are most likely to engage in an abortion. As a consequence, the societal cost.
But then you say,
I'm not excusing the behavior. I'm just saying, again, nuance.
But then you hook back to the eugenics movement and you say, well, people of color are more likely perhaps to use abortion, right? And then is abortion actually a tool of eugenics to reduce reproduction of those folks, right?
You're not going to hear me disagree. I'm just saying that, to me, even in these, this is not, to me, Jesse Ridgway, it's sort of like the George Costanza. If you do the opposite of his behavior, if everything you've chosen is wrong, and he walks up to the woman and he says, no, Elaine, young or men who don't have a job and don't have any prospects and live with their parents, don't approach strange women in a restaurant. And Jerry says, well, if the opposite's true. And so she says, oh, you just ordered the same lunch as me. And he looks at her and goes, my name is George. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents. And she goes, I'm Victoria. Hello. I'm just saying that the opposite of what Jesse Ridgway, what he did, I think would have been the right decision. Whether you choose to do this or not, abort the fetus or not, that's between, again, I want to stress safe, legal, and rare. That's between you and your loved ones and what morality you deduce. Okay, that being said, I don't agree with the idea to post it, and I don't agree with the idea of minimizing it. Basically, like, well, the child had trisomy 21, so, it's complicated, though. I do recognize nuance. That's all I'm saying about this debate. So
I guess, how do you help me square this circle?
I don't know. I've never understood that expression. How can you square a circle?
Well, it's actually, it's derived from the historically trying to compute pi. So you would make a polygon with lines.
Get the hell out of here. This is where you actually know the answer to this?
Yeah.
I just remember 3.1415. And the reason I know that is my godson, Eddie, was born on Pi Day.
Yeah.
His middle name is Pi. Jim, you remember that. You met Eddie.
Yeah.
Jimmy's son, Eddie. That's my godson. He was born on Pi Day. So his full name is Edison Pacalo Pi. Pacalo is some Hawaiian word that is very cool sounding. I don't know what it means, but it's cool sounding, right?
Yeah.
And Pi is part of his middle name, because he was born on 31415. But please continue. I did not know this historical analogy, and I'm sure the 12 listeners right now didn't know either. So,
so how we figured out pi was initially essentially taking a polygon, say 4 sides, then 6 sides, 8 sides. If you make enough of that, the perimeter of the polygon, which you can compute mathematically, and the ratio to the distance across it will approximate pi. And that's how they initially tried to compute what pi was back in the Greeks and whatever. So that's squaring the circle.
Very cool. All right, so let me now continue. What am I squaring? What circle am I squaring for you?
So how do we put together people who talk about things like systems of oppression, right? Critical whatever theory, right? Systems of power, patriarchy, etc.
I know this is somehow or another. This is going to come back to California. Those crazy nuts out in California, those liberals.
Yeah. Diversity is our strength. They say all those things, and then out of the other side of their mouth, they're okay with wiping out people with disabilities.
You're not. Again, I try to be as intellectually consistent as I can be. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm sure I fail. I'm sure you do too.
I do.
But you're not going to hear me dispute that. This idea that diversity is our strength, and then so let's get rid of the least among us. No, right? I don't understand that. You're absolutely correct on that. And again, what I have found, and both sides suffer from this, but it tends probably to be more liberal driven at this point than otherwise. I've always said liberals, as you know, have killed comedy. And secondarily, it used to be liberals that would embrace diversity of thought and not try to sort of, make sure that everybody spoke the same language. Ronald Reagan used to say the problem with the Democratic Party is they seek out heretics. We seek out converts.
Mhm.
Meaning, if you agree with me on, say, 9 out of 10 things or 8 out of 12 things, come join the Republican Party. The Democrats are in a circular firing squad shooting each other because not everybody's on the same page saying the exact same thing. I agree with you. I think diversity is important, and I 100% agree with you. And that should include people with disabilities.
Yeah. So I don't know, folks. If you're sick of me ranting, I thank
No,
you.
I have a couple questions, though, because
yeah, go for it.
and you've earned, Timmy, I don't care what necessarily, I shouldn't say this, but I think you've earned the right, and it's important that you be heard. I mean, not only are you someone who has a profound disability, your son has Down syndrome, you read this article, it's got to be enormously upsetting. And just sort of the flippant way in which it's written. And first of all, he's posting it on YouTube, so I get it. You've earned every right. If anybody has the right to hold court on this, you do, and I agree with you. One of the things I do want to ask you, though, is how do you feel about, for instance, and one of the things that I've always had trouble squaring this circle is why do humanely we put animals down and we can't do the same thing to humans? I find that to be very difficult. I think that humans are even more profound because I think humans have volition, animals do not.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the reason we're willing to do it. But I do think that, how do you feel about that? I mean, if we're going to talk about this issue,
yeah,
do you think at the other end of the spectrum that doctor-assisted suicide, and again, I want to stipulate that I don't believe that, you get some quack chiropractor that says, yeah, he's having a bad day, put him down. I'm talking about the people that are terminal, that have less than a year to live. 6, 7, 8 doctors testify to this effect, blah, blah, blah. And that's not saying doctors can't be wrong, but I mean, if you have a terminal cancer, I mean, I've heard stories from Katie even. She'll come home and this patient has such and such a disorder, and that's a death sentence.
Yeah.
You see it, right?
I mean, life is a death sentence.
How do you feel
John?
about, first of all, as a physician? Secondarily, how do you feel about that as somebody with disability?
Yeah, well, first of all, and also I have to put on my psychiatrist hat. I think you would have to be very careful to rule out that the person is suffering from a treatable mental illness that renders their opinion of how they're doing, distorted.
But Timmy, let's strip that onion away. I'm not talking about people that are going to try and find the loopholes. I'm talking about the truly terminal. I'm talking about people that are in hospice care. Coach Holtz was at the end of his life. He knew he had 6 months to live. Should he be able to, of sound mind and body, be able to do so? I happen to say yes. Are you okay with that? Can you square that circle?
I think there probably are cases. As far as physicians, though, here's the hard part. I think it's a very easy, bright line to say when I go to the physician, he or she is going to be on the side of life. I don't have to worry about them saying, "Hey, how can I?"
The Hippocratic Oath is do no harm.
Right.
I mean, so
right.
But again, you can interpret harm as sustaining, right? Our golden retriever, Isabel, who was my pup, Chloe, our new golden retriever, she's 5. She's her mother's pup. I mean, she is obsessed with her mother. I'm pretty convinced that Chloe's a lesbian, and in love with my wife, and going to kill me. This is like Macbeth.
Right? Yeah, pretty much.
Right, but she was in pain.
Yeah.
It was so obvious as the nose on her face, and the question was, am I sustaining life for her or for me?
Yeah.
And I think it was the latter, not the former. And that's where I draw the line. Could not the same thing apply to humanity?
Right. Well, I think so. In order.
So to your point, please continue. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but this is I'm trying to find out where these lines are for people.
Yeah.
Do you believe that in volition? I think in a free society, A, you should be able to own a gun. And B, I think you should have truly full volition. I think if you're of right mind and can testify to it, and a doctor says, hey, you got less than a year to live, I'm okay with it.
The hard part is, I think, building in enough controls and safeguard around this, because, for example, if a lot of the terminally ill may be on the government's dime. And there may be government incentives, like the death panels they talked about when Obama.
Europe has been doing this for years,
and
Timmy.
They kill a lot of people, John.
Yeah, but Timmy, okay, so again, I'm talking. Here's a perfect example, and I used to try to tell my students about this. There are uncomfortable discussions that have to be had. And again, if you are a 3-pack a day Marlboro Red smoker and you're 81 years old and you're eligible for a heart transplant, I think there should be a scoring system, a rating system, something. I'm not trying to minimize the value of life. What I'm trying to do is to triage or allocate precious resources. And I just don't know if that person necessarily should get the same attention as someone else. Do you understand
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And that's what I think that were these death panels, and it's a very effective way to scare the you know what out of people. I just don't think it's fair. I think that these death panels essentially are adults having a conversation about what is the quality of life that I can expect in this short time I'm left here on this earth.
But I also think when the government is paying for something, that automatically changes incentives, and there might be, aren't you sure Mr. Jones is ready to die because he's costing us a lot of money? Like,
Come on.
no,
Come on. You're talking about an economy that's 20 to 30 trillion dollars. I mean, what at the end of the day, half of the country receives some form, indirectly or directly, of socialized medicine. There are 97% of taxpayers who get far more in government largesse than they do in actual taxation. So at the end of the day, legitimately people who can complain are the 3%.
Well,
I'm not going to
Hold on. I don't know if I can find it for the show notes, but I recall a case in Canada where somebody was having difficulties, and the person on the phone, in the Canadian system was like, well, have you thought about just dying? And so like, I actually think
Tim,
these things can happen.
I'm sure Fox News is in the process of booking this person, especially if a Democrat's in office. If Trump says it, they'll be like, oh, how great of an idea. My point, though, is there's always going to be these idiotic examples that doesn't disprove the question, though. The foundational question I'm asking you, forget the money, there's no such thing as money. There's no such thing as government.
Right.
Do you think that volition in and of itself is a reason enough for someone to be able to, in good conscience, determine their time and place and manner of death the same way we do with our loved animals?
I think, yes, I think some
as
people...
a physician, do you agree with that? As a human being, as a person with a disability, I'm curious to hear your opinion. I'm genuinely trying to get...
As a human being, I can see that notion. As a physician, it makes me very uncomfortable.
Fair.
Right.
And
so
can you separate the two?
I think so, yeah. And it goes back to what I said at the top, right? Is that I think life has value, right? And so I would not,
But so does dignity, Timmy. You see these people, again, we don't have to go down this road, but you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
And I have seen people that are in the last throes of life that are not the same people that I knew for 30, 40, 50 years. And it's difficult because that's going to be my memory. And I'm not saying my memory should supersede the value of life. You understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm watching my dog suffer, I had to ask myself, am I keeping her alive for me or for her?
Right.
And it was the former, not the latter. I had to admit that. And she told me when it was time. I think human beings can do the same thing. I just do. I understand it. But again, the devil's in the details, as tends to be the case with everything, right?
Because I'm more comfortable with it as a human being than a physician. I don't know if that makes sense.
That kind of does, actually, because you probably it's sort of like philosophical. I used to tell my students this, and this is true. There are a number of things that philosophically you can believe in. Like, for instance, I believe in the flat tax. I think everyone should pay a flat tax on sales, income, property. Philosophically, I agree with that. Pragmatically and practically, it's next to impossible.
Right.
So you can be philosophically correct, morally correct, blah, 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 and pragmatically wrong. So I have no problem seeing how you as a physician could be wary of this, yet you as a sentient human being who believes in spirituality and other things says, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
And again, you're nuanced.
That's how I'd say it right now. So.
Well, Timmy, can I dovetail on our conversation? Because I want to give my whack job this week.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to let you hold court on Jesse Ridgway and his wife on their decision. I'm going to make him my whack job this week because he is the quintessential problem that I see with the society, which is privacy doesn't exist. Personal autonomy doesn't exist. Everything has to be shared. I find it to be morally, ethically, just pragmatically wrong to post this on social media. This is not something that needs to be shared. Tell us about the birth of your child. Tell us about, somebody winning a baseball game. I don't need to know about your wife's cancer diagnosis or, all these terrible things that can happen to people in this course of this run we call life. Stop posting things on social media. Not only don't I care, it's not appropriate. You're my whack job this week, Jesse Ridgway. I'll let Timmy call you the whack job for your decision. I'm calling you the whack job for posting it. Keep your mouth shut.
And if you ever want to come on the podcast to challenge us to,
I would absolutely
we'd love to have you
on the podcast. Again, I recognize the nuance of the decision. I'm not agreeing with it. It's not the decision I would have made. I understand the nuance, though. I do. I think it's the wrong decision. He's nuanced and he's wrong. So just don't share it. I don't find that to be appropriate. Do you disagree with that, Tim?
Oh, absolutely. I think the sharing is just ridiculous. I mean, you don't have to tell a million people and expect full-throated support or acquiescence. Like, what planet are you from?
I mean, you're a psychiatrist. You're lucky if you have 2 or 3 really close friends in your life.
Yeah.
Share it with those people.
Yeah.
Don't share it with the million people that are supposed to be your quote unquote friends because they happen to be following you on social media. They don't know you from Adam.
I mean, it's my, I thought about this too. I still listen to Michael Jackson. I like Kevin Spacey's movies.
And the Cosby Show was on the other day. And Timmy, I wrestle with this. Go ahead. I know where you're going.
Yeah.
Can you separate the two? Can you separate the entertainment value? Yeah.
So I kind of try to, but part of me hopes that the clicks will, the clicks and the subscribes will drop off for him. Like if this people say, you know what, there's other people I can follow, that would not bother me. I'd not call him for a boycott or anything, but
the Germans, not to bring up the Germans again, but we already brought up the Nazis. The Germans have a wonderful term, which is Schadenfreude, which is delighting in the misery of others.
Yeah.
And if he suffers a little bit as a consequence, you're probably not going to be disappointed. And Timmy, goddamn it, you've earned the right. I mean, I can't dispute anything you've said.
So my heroes, John, are different. They're the set. You've talked about them before too. They're that set of quiet, loving people who value kindness over clicks and virtues over viewership. The kind of people who embrace what life brings with love and often with faith. And sometimes it's Down syndrome, sometimes it's blindness, sometimes it's something else. Or it's more invisible, like schizophrenia or another mental health disorder. These are the people who know that life itself is a gift and it's precious. We all know people like this, or at least we should, and they're my heroes this week.
Here, Timmy. I'll leave it on that. That's a great point. Just the quiet heroes that do these everyday things. You and Blue Leaf. So, but Paul's the man.
Paul's the man.
Paul is the man. Yeah. Peter's all right, but he's handsome and he's, talented, what have you. I don't worry about him. He'll be just fine. Yeah. It's like, he'll be just fine.
He'll be fine.
Well, do me a favor, Timmy. Give a hello and tell Paul I was asking about his pajamas, will you?
All right, certainly.
Yeah. So, well, Timmy, I thank you very much. Honestly, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. If it means anything, thank you. And this is John Bolin signing off, saying, "Hey, misbehave, drive fast, take chances."
And John, thanks for listening and tossing around these ideas. And I'd like to tell everybody, if everybody likes what you're doing, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. Let's keep talking.